Welcome to Echo of Crime YouTube channel. The silent witness on her wrist, San Jose, California. A quiet suburban street, lined with tidy lawns and stucco homes. The kind of neighborhood that rarely makes the news. On September 13, 2018, everything changed inside one of those houses. When police entered the home of Karen Navarra, a 67-year-old medical office worker, they found her slumped at the dining table. A glass of wine sat half full. A note on the table read simply, "I'm sorry." At first glance, it looked like suicide, until investigators noticed the bruises on her arms and the deep wound across her neck. What the detectives didn't yet know was that Karen's wrist held the key to the entire mystery. Strapped to her arm was a Fitbit Alta HR, its screen dark, battery drained. It looked useless, but it wasn't. Inside, it held a minute-by-minute record of her final moments. A routine visit. Neighbors told police Karen was quiet, friendly, and close to her elderly stepfather, Tony Aiello, a 90-year-old retired carpenter. He said he'd stopped by that Thursday afternoon to bring her pizza and biscotti from the local bakery. They chatted, he claimed, and he left her alive around 3:35 p.m. Nothing about the visit seemed unusual, but detectives were uneasy. The house showed no sign of forced entry, and nothing was stolen. Whoever killed her had been welcomed inside. The only timeline they had was Tony's word, until they turned to the tiny tracker on Karen's wrist. The data speaks. A court order let investigators download the Fitbit's data. When analysts opened the report, they saw Karen's heart rate graph rise and crash within minutes. At 3:20 p.m., her pulse spiked sharply, like someone suddenly frightened or struggling. By 3:28 p.m., it flatlined. The watch stopped detecting movement entirely. That single graph told a story no one else could. Karen Navarra died at 3:28 p.m., 7 minutes before Tony A. The smartwatch timeline, the Fitbit, became the case's anchor. Investigators reconstructed the final 20 minutes of Karen's life entirely from data. 3:17 p.m. Front door sensor detects motion. 20 p.m. Heart rate spikes rapidly. 28 p.m. Heart rate drops to 0. 35 p.m. Aiello's car leaves driveway. It was the first time in San Jose's history that a wearable device defined the moment of death so precisely. One detective later said, "The Fitbit told us what no witness could." A motive in the past. The question left was why. Investigators learned that Karen and her stepfather had argued over family finances. She suspected he'd taken checks from her late mother's account. Friends said she planned to confront him that week. Prosecutors believed that confrontation turned deadly. The staged scene, the wine glass, the apology note, was meant to disguise murder as suicide. But the digital heartbeat couldn't be forged. When data becomes a witness, forensic analysts explained how Fitbit sensors read light through the skin to measure blood flow. When a heart stops, the sensor stops detecting pulses. It's precise to within seconds. Combined with Wi-Fi timestamps and video evidence, it built a timeline more accurate than any human recollection. In court filings, prosecutors called it biometric testimony. The device that once counted Karen's steps had, in the end, counted her final 8 minutes alive. Justice interrupted. Before the trial could begin, Tony Aiello died by suicide in September 2019. He never faced a jury. Still, investigators considered the case solved. In their report they wrote, "The Fitbit evidence conclusively contradicts the suspect's account." The case made national headlines as one of America's first smartwatch murders. CNN, NBC, and Wired magazine covered how digital health data was transforming homicide investigations. When detectives first examined Karen Navarra's house, they had little to go on. No broken locks, no forced entry, no defensive wounds suggesting a stranger's attack. The crime felt personal, calm, deliberate. But the motive and the suspect's story didn't align. The key clue sat quietly inside a San Jose police lab, Karen's Fitbit Alta HR. Investigators already knew the device had stopped recording at 3:28 p.m., yet they needed more, proof that connected the data to human behavior. So they called in a digital forensics team from the Santa Clara County Crime Lab. The digital autopsy, Analysts began what they called a digital autopsy. They pulled data not only from the Fitbit servers, but also from Karen's home Wi-Fi router, smart TV logins, and door motion sensor. Every smart signal told a story. The router showed the Fitbit syncing one last time at 3:27 p.m., seconds before the heart rate flatlined. The motion sensor near the kitchen door registered movement at 3:17 p.m., precisely when Tony Aiello's car appeared on the neighbor's security camera. By aligning these signals, Fitbit heart data, Wi-Fi timestamps, and video footage, investigators created a timeline accurate to the minute. It showed a short, violent encounter that lasted less than 10 minutes, a story that collapsed. When detectives re-interviewed Aiello, they compared his words against that timeline. He repeated the same line. "She was fine when I left." But the data stripped the statement bare. Detective Brian Meeker later said, he didn't realize her heart had already stopped while he was still there. They showed him still frames from the security footage, side by side with the Fitbit chart, one image of his car pulling out of the driveway, the other showing her heart rate plunging to zero. The visual contrast was damning. Aiello had no answer. Investigators also found Karen's blood on. In the end, Aiello never faced trial. But by the time of his death, investigators knew the truth. The smartwatch had done what human eyes could not. It watched the exact moment life ended, and it remembered. The future of truth. The case of Karen Navarra never saw a courtroom. In September 2019, almost exactly a year after her death, Tony Aiello was found dead in his home, an apparent suicide. There would be no testimony, no verdict, no cross-examination. But for detectives, the data had already spoken. The Fitbit evidence had revealed the entire story with microscopic precision. A story told not through words or witnesses, but through numbers, heartbeats, steps, and silence. In a sense, the device had become the final witness, the one that couldn't lie, forget, or fear, the case that changed the game. Within weeks, media across the country ran the headline, "Murder Solved by Fitbit Data." For many, it sounded like science fiction, a gadget solving a killing. But for investigators, it was a glimpse into the future of forensics. Every wearable phone and smart home device now had the potential to preserve truth in its own digital language. The Santa Clara County Crime Lab began training more officers in digital evidence recovery, expanding beyond phones and laptops to health trackers, smartwatches, and even voice assistants. Technology wasn't just part of daily life anymore. It was part of the chain of evidence, a wave of digital witnesses. After the San Jose case, similar stories surfaced worldwide. In Australia, the Apple Watch data from murder victim Myrna Nilsson revealed a struggle that contradicted her daughter-in-law's alibi, helping secure a conviction. In Greece, the smartwatch worn by Caroline Crouch proved her husband's story of a home invasion was false. Her heart had stopped hours before he claimed the intruders broke in. In Connecticut C. Today, in labs and classrooms, investigators still reference the San Jose Fitbit murder as the turning point, the moment technology crossed from convenience to justice. The final reflection. As night settles over suburban California, the house where it all happened looks ordinary again. A new family lives there now, unaware of the silent witness that once pulsed inside those walls. But somewhere in an evidence locker, that old Fitbit still sits sealed in plastic, a black band, lifeless screen, and one last heartbeat stored in memory. It's a reminder of how fragile life is, and how even in death, truth can find a way to speak. Because in the end, the smartwatch didn't just track a killer, it tracked the moment a heartbeat became history.